You're absolutely right. And right now, there's a lot of people who don't think the world is beautiful. So let them
Yeah,
know it is.
yeah. And what I've found is that there are people that are some of the most marginalized people in the world, and they turn out to be the happiest because they're so grateful for what they do have.
Hmm.
And often it's just that they have each other,
Yep.
and the human connection is so important.
Yes, it is. All right. Don't say anything else because I want to interview you. Welcome to Gratitude Geek. I'm Candice Rodarte. Today I'm joined by the author of the number one best-selling book, The Purposeful Growth Revolution: 4 Ways to Grow from Leader to Legacy Builder, Mark A. Mears. Welcome.
Thanks, Candace. It's so great to be with you today.
So, Mark, you are the founder and chief growth officer for Leaf Growth Ventures, where you inspire individuals, teams, and organizations to find purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential. Tell us your story. Why did you create this business?
Well, it was an epiphany that hit me about 10 years ago. And long story short, I was let go from a executive position in a company that was buying us and living in Southern California. And then that was February 21st, I want to say 2013. And that's about the time in Southern California that spring starts to emerge. And so, not in Michigan where you are, but certainly there. And so, after a fitful night of sleep, I took the dog out the next morning, and Candace, as God is my witness, we had a fig tree that was barren from the 6 or 7 weeks of winter we do get. But then, as I saw that fig tree, as the sun was coming over the wall in our backyard, there on the end of one branch was this tiny green sprig of a leaf just starting to emerge. And it was then that I got this epiphany that a leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. And I took the dog inside, I went to my office and started banging out a treatment on my computer for this idea of growth. Leaf is where all growth happens in a plant or a tree through the magic of photosynthesis, as we all learned in high school, and some of us maybe later. And then I got this idea that it really is also an acronym. It stands for leadership, engagement, accountability, right?
Hmm.
And fulfillment.
Oh, that's a
And
word that you don't hear in
this
business very often.
exactly. And my team and I turning this brand around, putting a new concept, new brand positioning around, only to be all of us told, we'll take it from here. It was not very fulfilling.
Yeah.
You have to have strong leadership, like the roots and the seed of a tree, right? You have to have engagement of one's heart, head, hands, and habits, like you need the trunk, the branches, and the system of nourishment, which is called savia, I found. It translates from Spanish to English as lifeblood. What's the lifeblood of any organization? It's people.
Hmm.
You have to have the leaf and fruit, which is the accountability. So we go leadership, it leads to alignment, engagement, that leads to uh, encouragement and empowerment, and then alignment that leads to achievement. That fig tree only knows how to be a fig tree, and if it achieves its purpose, it's growing fig leaves to help grow the tree strong and tall, but then also to bear fig fruit, which is not only sustenance for animals and people, but it has seeds in the middle that, when time is appropriate, are scattered to grow new trees. And then you have fulfillment, which is the ecosystem. That fig tree can grow in different environments, but when it's in its most fertile environment, it grows strongest and tallest and most fruitful. So it's like the culture, or what I call a community in an organization. You want it to be nurturing, you want it to be an environment that maximizes one's full growth potential. And so that is where I got this idea of creating this book that then has turned into consultancy and speaking opportunities. And I'm also working on a cool e-learning platform. So I consider myself a growth junkie, Candace. So I know you are a gratitude geek, and I'm more of a growth junkie who infuses gratitude in my approach, which I'm really excited to talk about.
There is no growth without gratitude.
Absolutely.
So there is and I don't know if it's a myth or not, but because we're talking about figs, I want to talk about this. There is a meme that goes around every once in a while about how, in order for a fig to grow, a wasp has to die. Is that true? since you cultivate fig trees. Is that true or is that a myth?
I've never heard that. So I verify whether it's true or not. What I can say is that insects play an important role in the growth of any plant or tree or grass. And so it's this beautiful ecosystem that most of us, the old adage is, maybe you can't see the forest through the trees. Well, oftentimes we don't know what it took for what we do see to get there. And that's what is beautiful is studying plants and trees as I've done. I don't have a botany background or any kind of, I pretty much kill every plant that I bring in the house. And so it's not about that, but it's about studying. And when you are curious, you learn things and then you appreciate them more. Once you have a deeper background and understanding of what it took for that thing, whatever it is, to be there and grow and thrive. And I'm grateful for curiosity.
Oh, me too. I'm a very curious person. I ask a lot of questions, and I think that's why I'm so drawn to being a podcast host, is because I ask so many questions. I don't like being on the other side. I don't like being interviewed, but I love
the other way. I enjoy asking questions, but I also enjoy imparting the wisdom that I've learned to help others along their growth journey. And so you can kind of do it both ways. Good questions are gold.
Since we're on the topic and you didn't know the answer, I'm Googling it. Does a wasp have to die in a fig for a fig to grow? You know what? Google actually autofilled that question. Yes, fig wasps also often die inside the figs they live in, but not all of them do. All right, there'll be a link to this in the show notes, y'all, because this is fascinating.
I'm curious about it. I was going to look this up, but you've already done it. So
yeah, there's a lot of information here. So, okay. So if the wasp climbs into a female fig, she pollinates it, but cannot lay her eggs and just dies alone.
That's sad.
So luckily, the female fig produces an enzyme that digests the wasp completely. The crunchy bits of a fig are seeds, not wasp parts.
Good to know.
How interesting. How interesting. I'll never eat a fig the same way again.
No. And think about all the fig Newtons I ate as a kid, too. But you just gave me a greater appreciation for wasps. I don't like wasps.
But they serve a purpose.
Wanton, and I don't like wasps. But now it's like, but they also do some beautiful things that I do enjoy. So that gives me a greater appreciation.
Wasps always have a bad rap because they're, the honeybees, they serve a purpose in the ecosystem, but wasps you didn't think had served a purpose, and now we know they do. Or fig wasps.
At least, yeah. But I'm sure there's other things that they do that we could look at, and also, again, be grateful for a creature that we think is basically put on this earth to scare and harm us.
Yeah. So what I didn't read was that if the female wasp enters a male fig, she will lay her eggs and then die, and the eggs hatch into the larvae that burrow out of the fig and turn into wasps. So there's this whole carrying pollen with them. So there is this whole circle of life with figs and wasps that work together.
Just didn't know that. Now I do, and I am smarter today.
There is a blog post for that.
Yes, I'm going to look.
There is, that you can write based on the whole leaf thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's for the sequel, which I'm actually starting on, and it's more zeroed in on this idea of putting the human back in human resources.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, the leaving the part out about the wasp dying. There is a purpose for that bug, that it has a purpose.
Yeah.
Every single person in an organization has a purpose.
Yes. And I think it's a leader's job. Notice I didn't say manager, because I believe words matter. A manager may be a boss, and I never let anyone call me that throughout my career, because I feel like a boss is someone you have to obey versus a leader is someone you want to follow. And a boss may merely be a title on a business card, and that won't last very long if they truly are embodying boss characteristics, especially in today's and post kind of COVID environment, where now millennials and Gen Z are outnumbering baby boomers in the workforce, and they're not going to put up with it. You know,
No.
the command and control management style has gone the way of the dodo bird, or it's on its way. Today, they don't want to be managed and required. They want to be led and inspired. And that takes a different way of leading. And they'll say, if a leader is someone you want to follow, a legacy builder is someone you want to emulate when it's your turn to lead. So now you're creating these new ripple effects that over time, I believe, will obfuscate the tired old command and control style that some of us of a certain age just put up with and thought, well, that's just the way it is. And today it's not. And we can be so much more productive when we help people grow into their purpose. And not only in life, but at work. A Deloitte study was recently released, and it said almost 90% of millennials and Gen Z want to experience purpose in their workplace, not just when they go home or on the weekend. And they're picking particular employers because of alignment with their purpose or values that they share, and are saying no to others, even if it's a higher paying job in some cases. And so I have hope for the future of work. And as someone who's also a senior leader network member for Conscious Capitalism, Inc., whose mission resonates very closely with my own, it's about elevating humanity through business.
I was going to ask you about Conscious Capitalism. Wait, tell me about this organization.
It's a global organization that was founded now, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years ago by John Mackey, who was the co-founder and CEO of Whole Foods, and a guy named Raj Sisodia, who's been a longtime professor and consultant. And essentially, that's their goal is, governments haven't proven to be as effective at getting after societal issues and the key change issues that we're seeing in the world. Religious organizations and nonprofits can only do so much, but it is businesses that actually have the resources, not just the manpower, but the financial resources and media power, et cetera, to actually make change happen.
Well, and they have more common sense than government does too.
I would agree with that. I hope no one's listening.
I always laugh when I see this is a very political time. We're in an election year and yada yada yada. So I'm just going to say it. I always find it humorous when Congress is trying to pass a law that I know, as someone who's worked in corporate America, wouldn't fly in corporate America. Like corporate America is going to address it better than the laws are. I'm trying to say that without being too political.
You know why, Candace? Because in the corporate world, we're accountable.
And boots on the ground.
Yeah,
they're dealing with people.
The
politicians don't deal with people; they deal with ideas.
Yeah, and their major goal is to get reelected. And
well, I would say that their major goal is to get reelected with funds from their donors. So they're trying to make their donors happy.
Yeah, and so are they held accountable to some, but not to the voting public often? And you might say, well, they are, because they can be voted out. They could be, but it's just for me, it's a crime that we don't have more progress on key issues. And so part of what I do now at this point in my life and career is, in addition to Conscious Capitalism, I'm on the board of a couple of different Kansas City area groups that are social justice related. And one of them is called the Good Faith Network. And it's a countywide interfaith initiative that's designed to get after some of the biggest problems that we face in our county: homelessness, affordable housing, and the mental health crisis. And so we partner with our government officials and local businesses to try to create programming around each of those three areas. And then another one is Allies for Racial Justice, which is a faith-based organization through my church, Church of the Resurrection, another church, St. James Church. And it's designed to bring us together to learn about each other and to work closer together, and understand that we're much more similar than we are dissimilar, and that we all face the opportunities, I say, versus issues, the opportunities to make our world better. And that to me is very motivating. And I've always been service oriented throughout every corporate position I've held, and whether it was locally in my church, but now I've got a much more acute or intense kind of purpose around paying it backward. And
Oh, yes, that was another thing I wanted to talk about. But before we go there, I want to talk about interfaith organizations. So I used to live in Texas in a community called Montgomery County. Montgomery County is a little bit north of the city of Houston, and they had an amazing, dynamic interfaith organization. Little churches, big churches. I don't know if you've ever been to a church in Texas, but they could seat 6,000, 10,000 people,
I
or you
lived,
could find one that seats 60, right?
I lived in Dallas twice and Austin, and so I get it.
So you get it. But what I loved about this interfaith organization is that your small 500 congregation church and your large 5,000 congregation church would work together to serve the community.
Yeah.
And we need more of that.
Well, and what's cool about that is I happen to be of a Christian faith, but I'm also working side by side with people who are of other faith traditions. And what unifies us is this idea of love.
Hmm.
And that's what binds us together as human beings, and serving others in our community,
Yep.
being grateful for what we have, but measuring portions to help others along their growth journey is fulfilling. And I think there's a lot to be said for fulfillment, which is why I use that word. Most people say, "Oh, I want to be happy," and some may even say, "I want to feel more joy in my life." And I would agree; those are two important things. But I think feeling a sense of fulfillment, it's a soulful feeling, more so than something that may be surface level like happiness, or even externally focused like joy. Those are just some things that I believe deeply in.
Well, fulfillment comes from gratitude as well.
It does. I think all roads lead back to gratitude if we're really being honest. And I write in my book about this idea of Zig Ziglar, the famous sales guru, had a saying of attitude, is your altitude.
Hmm.
And I love me some Zig Ziglar, but I wanted to repurpose the word attitude with gratitude, to say your gratitude is your altitude. If you're grateful for not only what you have in your life, but who you have in your life, all of a sudden now your countenance is different. And flipping that old victim mentality around from things happening, to me, to a victor mentality of, well, let's look at things as happening for me.
Hmm.
I think that mindset shift comes from this idea of gratitude, of taking stock in what we do have, and getting over our pity party, guest of one, and really looking at something as, this is happening for me. What lessons can I learn? And also, let me double down on what I'm grateful for, because that then becomes the foundation for a bounce back. If something happens to you and you think of it as, well, someone did that to me, you're going to miss a lesson, and you're going to miss an opportunity. And flipping that around to, that happened for me, it sucked in the moment, I'll be honest, but now I've learned this from that. Now I can bounce back. Now I can see it differently. And now I can make a step function change growth, where maybe before I was just kind of creeping along incrementally.
I've been living with metastatic breast cancer for nearly 11 years now.
Wow.
And when I was first diagnosed, I joined a Facebook group. And in that Facebook group was a very active participant who had written a book called Cancer is Not a Gift, and It Didn't Make Me a Better Person. And I just thought, wow, how can you be so cynical? You know, why can't you look at all the wonderful things that have happened to you because of your diagnosis. And it never sat well with me. And I've called out this book before on the show. 11 years ago, I was told I had metastatic breast cancer and then I would be in treatment for the rest of my life. That was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
How can I not feel grateful for every single day that I have lived since then?
Yeah. No, that's great. There's a new friend of mine. I'll just call her Katie. Well, because that's her name. Just, wrote a book called Too Young for Cancer.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Had a rare
Yeah.
form of cancer, and through amazing work of medical doctors and science, was able to beat it. And she wrote this book, and she does talks around the country, and she donates all of her money to this organization that's designing ways to get after this rare form of cancer. Her attitude of gratitude and going through that process, nobody says, "Oh my gosh, thank you for that diagnosis. Thank
No.
you for all these treatments." But you have the ability then to come back and look at it differently over time and with perspective.
Hmm.
By starting with gratitude and saying, well, I still have this, I still have that. And matter of fact, I have this more than ever. And now I've got more friends calling me, or I've got more support, or I've got more, whatever it is. I never had cancer, but my mom had it twice. And so I understand, the effects of it. And I also know how we all rallied around her, especially my older sister, who I call affectionately Saint Julie, because she truly is a saint. And it's a beast. It sucks, but it is what it is. So what can you do with it to conquer it in more than just a cure, but in ways that your mind and your body and your spirit and your soul can be fulfilled, regardless of your body being damaged?
Well, and what I found was that there are amazing people in the world who have giving hearts and want to help people. And, without having been in a position to need the help, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
I'm a helper. I'm always the first person to volunteer, and I've always been that way. But before this, I was never in a position where I was the one who needed the help.
Yeah.
And, I learned how to accept it. Not an easy thing to learn how to accept it, but to also know that there are so many people in the world who are willing to give it.
Yeah, and I found that along my journey in writing this book. I mean, I never set out to write a book, or I'd never thought of myself as an author. But when this epiphany came to me and I started kind of building on it, first it started as a presentation, then it kind of became a chapter or just a written treatment. And I, years later, built it out to a book. But people say, well, how long did it take to write? I'm like, almost 10 years from start to finish. And I would work on it, during a vacation, or if I was in between jobs, or if I just, on a weekend, got up early and really had an idea. I started thinking, this is pretty good. I'm seeing this bigger vision. And Candace, I don't have very many gifts, but one of them is being a visionary. I can see patterns and possibilities, or connect dots in ways that others may not even see the dots. And that's how this book came together. Is it tells this whole story, but it came from this heart of paying it backward, which I talk about as most people think, oh, isn't it pay it forward? I'm like, no, it's paying it backward. And here's why. When I go to Starbucks, not only am I a growth junkie, Candace, but I'm a coffee junkie. And when I go to Starbucks to the drive-through, I intentionally, not randomly, I don't believe in random acts of kindness. I think you need to be intentional about it. And then you'll look for more opportunities to pay it backward and help others along their growth journey. Well, I'll pay for the car behind me. I don't know them. They don't know me, but I physically can't pay for the car in front of me because they're already gone. So it's paying it backward. And what I am told when I come back and they go, oh, you're that guy, and you created this chain reaction as cars behind you, paid for the car behind them. And that's what I mean by paying it backward, to create this kind of virtuous cycle of reciprocity. It's like that fig, seed that then starts a new fig growth at some point, right? And that starts a new life that has new fig seeds, and so on and so forth. So this idea of taking something tragic and turning it into magic is really an important concept. And I've had some hard lessons that I've learned, and I've played the pity party, woe is me, and blah blah blah.
It's
And
okay to have a pity party every once in a while.
it is. You need, and I've learned, and I don't know if this is, well, I think scientifically it's more rooted in males, but we often don't want to go through the internal work necessary to get past disappointments. We just want to move on to the next thing and compartmentalize it, hope it goes away. Well, kind of like sweeping things under a rug. It ultimately has to be dealt with. So I've learned a lot about my own self-care through some really tough things that happened a few years ago in my life, from a divorce to my mom dying. It sounded like a bad country song. My dog passed away. My kids left the nest, and I was downsizing and trying to finish this book and going through a lot of transition
All at the same time.
all at the same time. And so thankfully, though, I was able to get some help, and reached out to not only friends but therapists, and said, I gotta figure out how to get past this, because it's all like water coming in faster than I can bail it out. But I had people, to your point, who came alongside me in my time of need. And so how could I, after the career I've had, just take that to my grave? And so I came up with this purpose statement a few years back as I was finishing the book, because I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. And that means making a difference in the lives of others. But again, like that virtuous cycle of reciprocity, it's inspiring them to want to do likewise. And that's what drives me through the back half of my life and career, because I don't want to, leave anything, left at the end of it. I want to make sure I've squeezed everything out of the experiences, the gifts, the talents that God gave me to help, make the world better in some way, shape, or form.
I love that you took 10 years to write your book, because that gives people who have had this book in their head that they've made. I can't tell you how many people I know who have said, I've been writing this book for a decade, right? You actually finished it. So
Yes.
they can too.
And I'll tell you, I'm glad you caught up on that. But also, I had to get over, and I have a chapter in the book about this. I had to get the FUD out. That stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay. The fear of, what if it's not any good? The uncertainty of, am I willing to give up my corporate W-2 career to get into something that I don't know what I'm getting myself into? The doubt, those background voices that you hear that almost like wet cement can harden if you allow them to take that form. And that is, well, no one really knows who you are. You're not some rock star CEO. Who wants to hear from you? All that leads to the paralysis of delay. I'll put it off till someday.
Hmm.
And
Someday is always in the future.
yeah, and you kind of give yourself a shot of dopamine, make yourself feel good for the moment, and you kind of, go off and do something different, right? Well, it wasn't until I just it was overwhelming signs that were telling me, Mark, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to do. And I up and resigned from my last C-level position, and said, if I don't do that, I will regret. And the pain of regret, if I look back and said, I didn't finish this, I didn't use those skills, those talents, those experiences to help others along their growth journey, to pay it backward. None of us know how many days we have left, right?
Yeah.
So you got to do what you feel called to do in the moment, and prioritize, and have faith, which overcomes fear, have hope, which overcomes uncertainty, and have belief, which overcomes doubt. But take action, indeed purposeful action, which will overcome the paralysis of delay. So I decided I was going to take purposeful action. I was going to drink my own Kool-Aid and finish my book. And I can tell you, Candace, the day that the Amazon package hit my front doorstep with my first book, I don't, other than maybe my wedding day and my kids being born, was the happiest day I can remember.
Mm.
And then the next time was when it hit bestseller status. I'm like, this is validation. And I feel like all of the pain and all of the agony and all the doubt and all of the uncertainty, all of that just kind of like everything lifted off my shoulders. And I then looked back and said, that dark time in my life, I had to go through that.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, I wouldn't have been as credible with the couple of chapters that I speak about in the book. And hopefully that'll be helpful for someone else who's overcoming their, needs to overcome their own FUD,
Yeah.
fear, their uncertainty, their doubt, their delay. Get some help to get over it, because you need to. Otherwise, you'll regret not getting it done. And for years, I was that guy.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book. I'm working on a book. And what I'm told is, I think the statistics are 96% of people that begin writing a book don't finish.
That sounds about right.
Books that are out there, right, that get published every day,
Yeah.
there's still, only 4% are completing it. I think that's right. Maybe it's 94. I can't remember.
I think there's a piece of passion too, though. I mean, you have people like Stephen King and Dean Koontz who put out books every year because they know the system. The first time you write a book, you don't know the system. You don't know how to do it, right? But once you learn how to do it, it's like riding a bike. Once you learn how to do it, it's easy to get back on the bike.
Yeah, well, that's where I never said I was going to write one book, and I got it finished, and I said, that was so hard. I'm not going to do that again. I am. To your point, I've got a new idea that is like a kind of a sequel from the book. As I mentioned earlier, I have a passion for purpose at work and life. And so the idea of putting the human back in human resources, you think of this day and age of, AI or augmented reality or virtual reality, machine learning, robotics, right? And what does that mean for us humans? Well, we still have to run all these things, right? And we need to create a fulfilling workplace, which, most people call it culture, because I believe it matter.
Culture is so important. I picked a career based on the culture of the company during the interview. I got 2 job offers. One of them paid better. I took the one that paid less because I liked the culture of the company better.
And you are.
And that was 40 years ago.
Well, you are a pioneer.
It wasn't 40 years ago. It was 30 something years ago.
A similar age would have said, who's paying more?
Yeah.
And so we learn.
But, and I'm a California girl, though. I think that Californians tend to be ahead of the.
Yeah, that's true.
Ahead of the curve. I have a 25-year-old daughter who just graduated from grad school. She didn't want to enter corporate America straight out of grad school. She wanted to come home. And we were fine with that, right? It's a weird time in the world. And if she wants to come live with us for a few years, I'm all for it, right? But she found a job that's kind of fulfilling for her, right? It doesn't pay very well, but she likes it.
That's on trend. All the research that I've been seeing is that all things being equal, people certainly want to be, paid competitively, but they want flexibility. They want to have a life. They want to feel like they're purposeful at work. They don't want to just punch in and out a clock and get paid every other week. They want to feel like what they do matters.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the profit of the company.
People who are over 30, or maybe 40, don't understand that. And they think that kids are, I hate this term, but it's people over 40 feel that people under 40 are snowflakes. They're just jealous, in my opinion, because the younger generation, they understand what's important. We only cared about money.
Well, yeah. And it was a very competitive workplace where the jobs weren't as plentiful as they are now. And so just to get a job was important, but to hold on to it was equally important. And like I said, it was something we tolerated. We didn't, I mean, I used to work till 10 p.m. My first job in an advertising agency. And, here I was thinking, like the old Peggy Lee song, is that all there is to life? This sucks. Whereas now younger people are like, no, I hope you don't play that. We're not going down that road, because it's not about, work-life balance, which is kind of a myth if it ever existed. It's now life, work, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
See the difference?
Yep.
And so most of us who went to a business school went to a school of management, right? We didn't learn how to be leaders that people want to follow, and unless we had a good role model. I was fortunate; I had some really good mentors and role models, and I I said I want to lead like that person, and that's how you get to be a legacy builder. That person at the time didn't know the impact they were having on me or the ripple effect. And it's kind of like when you throw a stone in the pond, right? You don't see the stone again, but what you do see is the ripple effect on top of the water. And I think that's kind of cool. So my concept is about putting love into the workplace. And I don't mean the kind of love that's going to get you a quick call from HR and escort out of the building.
Let's talk about that for a minute in a minute, but
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I did want to talk about love. A few weeks ago, I was able to interview the CEO of that job, of that company that I had chosen between the higher paying job and the
Yeah.
groovier culture, right?
Yeah.
The business was the North Face. I mean, because if you're a listener, you've heard the interview. So he was the CEO of the North Face, and I went to work for the North Face when I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
And I learned in the few years that he was the CEO when I worked there. There were three CEOs while I was there, but in the few years that he was the CEO, I learned from watching him.
Yeah.
And I was able to tell him that when I interviewed him a few weeks ago,
That's awesome. He
and
said,
oh, I think he was a little embarrassed, but but he didn't remember any of the stories that I shared with him.
yeah, that's the point. A role model doesn't know who's watching. And as someone who's been in the C-suite, it's like a fishbowl. Everyone's watching your every move, everything you say, everything you write, and you're under kind of, well, another metaphor is a microscope, right? A fishbowl is one, but you really are studied, and people are learning good things,
Hmm.
and maybe picking up bad habits as well. Because
And
I had some true bosses that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but I picked up some of their traits and thought it was just normal.
yeah,
Uh, and it's not, and it shouldn't
yeah,
be.
yeah,
And today's day and age, you wouldn't see that. And some of the great leaders that we used to revere were like Lee Iacocca, who turned around Chrysler at the time, or um, Steve Jobs, right, who created one of the world's now most valuable companies, or Jack Welch, who ran GE, but cut 10% of his team every year. Um,
yeah.
so we have a different view of what leadership looks like today.
Hmm.
I love that you said North Face, because I'm sure you're aware of Patagonia, a major competitor, but a great example of leading through purpose.
He went on to be the CEO of Patagonia for 7 years after he left the North
There
Face.
you go.
FYI.
Yeah. And so great example of purpose-led companies
Hmm.
that infused their team members. I don't like the word employers or employees. It sounds like you're just working for a job
Yeah.
versus a team member where you play a valuable role in the success of the broader enterprise. Your customers, your business partners, and your communities. And that's why I'm so passionate about conscious capitalism and this whole idea of how business and capitalism can be a force for good if it's
Hmm.
used appropriately. It's purpose and profit, not or. And case study upon case study proves this out. And that's why I want to help leaders understand what it means to be purpose driven in their work, and help their team members grow into their purpose at work.
Well,
As
when you have a buy-in, you want the companies to succeed. Like Chobani gave stock to every single employee. They had a buy-in. You know,
Yeah,
they
engagement, right? And instead of what the kids today are calling quiet quitting, you get people who are bought in because they feel it's aligned with their values, their sense of purpose, and that they're making a difference. And so when they buy in, they're deepening their level of engagement, increasing their productivity and the quality of their work, and oh, by the way, staying longer, which
yeah.
is a major problem today in the workforce. Is the labor line is
My father had the same employer most of his life. I mean, 40 years or something. He worked for the same
my
organization.
dad did as well, 40
That
years.
that doesn't happen anymore.
Now.
Yeah. But it would be nice if it did, because if a person stays at a company longer, again, the buy-in, the purpose. I'm part of this organization. I'm an important member of this team. And the other thing is there's that, I think it was a telecom company where the CEO or the founder took a huge pay cut so that he could pay every single person who worked for him $70,000 or more. I, I will find it and put it in the show notes, y'all, because it's important to know. But that company is thriving 10 years later. Thriving. I can't remember the name of the company though. So that's valuing the people. The janitor is getting paid $70,000 a year. The janitor can buy a house.
Yeah.
You can't buy a house on minimum wage in 2024.
No. Yeah.
So
the American dream is not as alive as it used to be. And so having someone, a leader like that, say, I can make a difference in my sphere of influence. I can't change the world, but I can change my sphere of influence, and I can make the lives of those team members work and be better for it. And you're right, they'll engage deeper, do better work, say good things about the company, net promoter, kind of score type things, as well as stay longer. And we know that tenured teams are more profitable teams. So it's in the interest of the leadership to accomplish this, because it's the revolving door that we're seeing today is a terrible burden to the labor line when you have to think about all the costs that go into replacing someone and training someone and recognizing, rewarding, and retaining someone. Not to mention the disruption. If someone leaves, someone else has got to fill in the gap. They're not going to be all that happy about that. Probably not going to get paid more. And so they might be thinking about leaving.
Or you leave and somebody who's already there at the company takes on your workload.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they're not probably get paid more, and they're happy about having to do that. So anyway, there's disruption that takes your eye off the ball of what the team is trying to accomplish. And so I say, what if we devoted more resources for people to be more human instead of treating humans as mere resources?
Yeah. Isn't that nice?
Different way of thinking.
Yeah. So is that the purpose of conscious capitalism, or is conscious capitalism more of a networking organization?
No, it has chapters throughout the country and in other parts of the world. Matter of fact, we have our annual CEO Summit coming up in Austin in late October. And one of the featured speakers is Hubert Joly, who helped turn Best Buy around, and has got a great book on the power of purpose in a retail environment by many different things. But one of the things he did is he empowered what they call the blue shirts in the stores to be more knowledgeable and guide customers to the right best products that would fit their needs, and build relationships instead of just go sell what we make the most margin on. And turned Best Buy around from going kind of like this to now going like this. And so he's going to be the keynote speaker. There's several others. John Mackey always does a wonderful job. Again, Raj Sisodi, the two co-founders, and then several other examples around the world of conscious leaders who have demonstrated the power of purpose in, again, growing the prosperity for all their stakeholders, their team members, customers, business partners, and communities.
And that can be done with any size company.
Any size. There's a lawn and leaf company in Kansas City where I live that has the same approach. I mean, here you have a lot of these are seasonal workers, as you can imagine, right? Well, they pay them throughout the year so that they can stay employed, right? And make their rent or house payments or whatever, right? And not too many do that. Most of the ones are they're hot for a while, and they'll hire people, and when the work goes away, then they'll let them go, and then they'll wash, rinse, and repeat, right? So
that's pretty remarkable.
To be purposeful. And so I talk to people all the time about that, and they're like, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm just really bootstrapping, I'm getting my business up and running. If I get to a certain level of business, then I'll carve some away and maybe we'll give to a charity at the end of the year and make everybody feel good. Like, no, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
You need to put purpose into your business model at the ground floor instead of waiting for some, metric of success to move you. And because again, if you are purposeful, it's easier to hire someone who shares your values, get them to work longer, harder, better, faster, et cetera. Make your customers happier so they'll want to come back and talk good of you. Help your business partners, your investors have a greater return on their investment, and make your community better by being there. And that to me is something that anyone can do at any size organization, but it has to start fundamentally from your business model.
Before I worked at the North Face, I worked at a dry dock in Oakland in the accounting department, and this is how it would work. They'd have two boats in dock that they would be cleaning. Dry dock is where you clean a boat, right? They'd have two boats in dock, they'd have all these staff, and then the boats would get cleaned and they'd lay everybody off until they had more boats. It just never made sense to me. And then they would rehire everybody that they laid off. Well, in the meantime, some of the people who get laid off may have found other jobs.
Right.
Cleaning a large ship is a skill. It's not easy work, right? So it never made sense to me. Today it doesn't make as much sense. When I was younger, I was a child, but it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't have a continuous flow of ships. Like, don't have two boats in dry dock at the same time, one at a time. It might take 6 weeks to clean the boat. Well, this ship can wait 6 weeks to get cleaned. In the grand scheme of a boat that carries 1,000 people on it, what's 6 weeks going to do, right?
In the restaurant business, we call it deferred maintenance. You pace and sequence it to when you can afford it and when you have the resources to get after it. And in the meantime, if it's not a food quality or safety issue, wait.
But who am I to judge? It's a multinational company. It just happened. I just happened to work at one of their, dry docks.
It's a good example, and similar to what I was talking about in kind of the, the seasonal industries that are notorious for doing what you just said, hiring and laying off, and hiring and laying off, and it's boom, splat.
In Oakland, California, there's not a lot of season. It's pretty much the same weather all year long.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, let's talk about love, and then we need to wrap up.
Yes.
So you are the king of acronyms, I have learned today.
Yeah, interestingly, I do enjoy wordplay and acronyms because I feel like they create a mind handle, something for you to latch onto. So when you think about a leaf, it's a symbol of growth and rebirth and the source of growth in a plant or a tree, and you want to learn about growth, and it's like, oh, now it's leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. That makes sense because there are 4 intertwined processes all revolving around the purposeful growth of whatever that institution stands for, right? Similarly, love is a model or an acronym, if you will, that stands for listen, observe, value, and empower. And if you think about it, it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all need to feel seen and heard. We all need to feel valued. And interestingly, as I was talking about this idea of empowerment, if you're truly growing into your purpose, you need someone who's going to empower you to be your very best. So listen on a deeper level. If you're a leader, take time to listen to your team members, and not just on a surface level, not just what they're saying, but ask questions to get at what they're not saying. You don't know what someone's going through at home. It could be a relationship issue, it could be caring for a sick parent, it could be a child that needs surgery. We'd have to be naive as leaders to not think that's going to not have an impact on that team member. But getting them to trust you enough to open up is the foundation of any good relationship, right? Is trust. So you want to listen on a deeper level, but you want to observe them in real time. Now, I happen to live in Kansas City, where we have the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. And Andy Reid is the coach, Hall of Fame coach. He doesn't wait till the end of the year to do some kind of coaching or appraisal, which we do in the workplace, an annual appraisal. It sounds like you're a piece of real estate or something. And annually, that would be silly. He's coaching on the field every day in practice, in the film room, in the team rooms, pre-game, during game, halftime, and after the game. Because by coaching and critiquing in a positive way and encouraging in real time is important for someone to feel seen, right? And then the next is valued, value the whole person. And I believe that, we're made up of four kind of realms of service: personal, ourself; relational, those we love, care about; professional, where we work; and spiritual, how we're connected to maybe a higher being or to each other. And so by seeing someone as a whole person and valuing them in that way, you then look beyond compensation, beyond reward and recognition, which are important. But you get at what makes them tick. What could I invest in them to help them feel more valued? Is it extra training? Is it a new opportunity? And then you go to empower. And that's when you've got a relationship. Because I think back, Candace, to when I learned to ride a bike. Okay. I remember getting this royal blue Schwinn Stingray bike with a banana seat and a flat wheel tire. And man, I thought this is going to be great. Well, I started with training wheels because I wasn't, old enough to pedal and do it all myself yet. So I'd careen around the neighborhood thinking I was all that. And then one day my dad said, okay, it's time to take the training wheels off. And in that moment, I had a kind of an equal sense of exhilaration, but also fear, because I was now having to do something to get outside of my comfort zone. So he told me how to do what I'm supposed to do. He showed me, but then he walked alongside me as I did it. And then I wobbled and fell a few times, who knows how many times, until I got the hang of it. And then I remember kind of pedaling down the street, being able to stop and start on my own, turn around, come back to my dad. And I don't know who had the bigger smile, he or I did, but I remember that sense of freedom, of being able to now, my world got bigger. Certainly my neighborhood got bigger. They lived on that bike that summer. But I feel that sense of empowerment, of being able to grow into a higher sense of self. So imagine at work, if we could have that same concept of empowerment, of helping people be their best self. And there are companies, I know when I was at Pizza Hut, David Novak was our leader of marketing at the time, and ultimately became the CEO of Yum Brands. But he had a program called Customer Mania. And basically he empowered team members to make it right for the guest, the customer. And that empowered people to make decisions that in the short term might have been looked at as eroding our margin, but in the long term, help build a relationship with the guest who said, thank you for treating me in a valuable way. And their empowerment led to a relationship that led to a bigger, broader business opportunity. So
in a market as competitive as pizza, doing the right thing means that customer is going to come back to you every time.
Absolutely. So leaders need to love and bring love into the workplace. And if they do, they'll not only become better leaders, but they'll become legacy builders, living legacy builders. Sometimes we think of the word legacy as something to bequeath something of value after we're dead and buried, but a living legacy is what can we do every day? And it's regardless of race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation, political affiliation, even what time zone you're in. We all have 24 hours in every single day. Mm-hmm. Now, one of us has a minute more or a minute less. And it's what we do with those 24 minutes to leave a legacy, to make the world better, to be more loving, and help pay it backward, to help others along their growth journey.
That's beautiful. I want to talk about Maslow's for a minute. So the hierarchy of needs starts with food and shelter, and at the top is fulfillment. But what I have learned over the last few years, and what you have learned, I'm going to assume, is that we need to flip that chart and put the fulfillment at the bottom. Because without the fulfillment, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yes, I think you're right, Candace. And actually, what most people don't know is that Maslow was working on expanding that hierarchy. And instead of just transcendence at the top, it was purpose.
Yeah.
So you flip that around and say your purpose is your guidepost. It's what gets you up in the morning. It's what you're grateful for. We all have different gifts that we've been given, talents, experiences, and it's really about how do we use them. to help others. And if you have that servant leadership mindset, that's the best kind of leader, is a servant leader, someone who is of service to others instead of looking for someone to do something for them.
I was a Girl Scout leader, and I had more than 20 girls in the troop, and they are all in their 20s now. Some of them are married, some of them have children, some of them have children and aren't married. Some of them have great jobs, some of them are still in school. I mean, they're all at different places in their life, but there was one who was extremely shy. Wasn't comfortable in her skin. Now they are living a nomad life, traveling around the country, and absolutely living their absolute best life.
Hmm.
And I love that for them. I
Yeah.
love that for them. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And that's the difference between somebody of our generation
Yeah.
and their generation. They are figuring it out on their own how to live their best life.
Well, and it's not as we grew up in a more kind of linear sense, which is go to school, get good grades, get a job, get promoted, get married, have a couple kids, put away a little money for college, and then somewhere around the age of 65, right off into the sunset.
Yeah.
I mean, what we were conditioned to think is that's how life works, because our parents did it and their parents did it before them. And it's as if COVID, I think trends were moving in that direction anyway, but I think COVID gave us all a bit of a timeout to reflect deeply on who matters.
It just fast forwarded what was happening anyway.
Or almost like putting it in a microwave and turning it up, and getting it there quicker than it would have gotten on its own. You mentioned your child. I have 26-and-a-half-year-old twin daughters, both of them whip smart, but I guarantee you they have a totally different view of work than I did. And their priorities are different.
Well, my daughter didn't know any other life than her parents were self-employed. That was the only thing she ever knew. So I think that might be part of it. I was going to mention quickly that when I was born, my father didn't believe that girls went to college.
Oh, wow.
And so he just, I was born in 1970. His thought process is, I don't have to save money for these kids to go to college because I have 3 girls and none of them are going to go to college. They're all going to get married and be wives, right? Ha 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 ha. Let me tell you, we did not turn out the way he thought we were going to turn out.
Yeah.
But it was always my expectation that my daughter would go to college or possibly even grad school and graduate, beyond that, at this point, she may go back and get her doctorates, but I always expected that she would go to college. So we have also, as a society, shifted the way we
Yes.
look at the opportunities that we expect of our children too.
Yeah.
So we're just evolving.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we're also seeing the importance and power of diversity, and not just gender, but in all facets of it. And those who see diversity as a check box are missing the point. Those who understand the true power and value of diversity as a competitive and leverageable advantage for their company or brand or enterprise, they're the ones that are getting it. And so it's part of the new book is this idea of creating a sense of community versus just culture. If you think about culture, it's a word that gets used a lot, maybe too much, and maybe most misunderstood. But a culture to me feels like a place one may merely be a part of. It's not bad.
Yeah.
The community is a place one feels they belong in. So if you think about it, DEI and diversity gets us in the door. That's good. Equity gives us an equal voice, better yet. Inclusion gets us a seat at the table, hallelujah. But if we don't feel like we belong, we're likely not going to feel psychologically safe enough to be vulnerable to give our very best. We're going to just be happy to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah.
Who wins then? And if that person doesn't feel they belong, then they're gone anyway.
You need to write a chapter in that book called Diversity is Not a Bad Word.
Yeah, there is a section in my current book on the power of what I call total diversity. And it's this notion of, we all think about diversity as outward diversity, how we look, how we talk.
It's also how we think.
But where we come from, outward is important because it kind of is the foundation for then internal diversity is how we think and how we contribute to the team based on our unique life experiences, right? So that's total diversity. It's inward and outward. And it is not a bad word. It's a very good word. And it needs to be, people need to be educated on the power of diversity, not some sort of mandate for diversity, because mandates don't work.
Yeah, but I back to the beginning of the conversation when we talked about corporate America. Corporate America figures that out on its own. They figured out some of this, not all of them, but some of those companies figured out on their own that a diverse workforce is a powerful workforce.
But there's been recently a backlash on diversity mandates that suggests that not everybody really is getting it. And so I think, again, it's like creeping incrementalism,
Yeah.
which gets you there, but it takes too much time.
That's
We
that's a completely another conversation, but a lot of that is political and it's ideology.
I don't disagree with you.
It's I wish we could I wish we could spend another hour together talking about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe some other time.
Yeah, I'll have to have you come back on the show. Okay, so this is your moment of gratitude. Mark A. Mears, for whom or what are you most grateful?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Well, for me, I'm most grateful for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, whom without that sacrifice, I wouldn't be here. In human form, my mom was my rock, and she passed away a couple of years ago during what we'll call the unpleasantness time in my life. But she was the one that really invested in me as an athlete growing up. She took me to practices, went to games, went to everything, and supported me. And I wouldn't be here without her. God rest her soul.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for grateful micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. To connect with Mark A. Mears, head over to the show notes at gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 243. I've been your host, Nesbitt-Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy.
I know we can make it easier than they can. We can make it better than before.